All right, hey guys, this video is going to go over a quick laws of exponents review and go over the 5 different laws that we have learned about this unit. And I'm going to show you a couple problems that put all of the laws together, so you're going to want to have these for your notes. All right, so the first law that we learned about was the product of powers, and I'm going to do this pretty quickly, but product, remember, means multiply. So this only works when you're dealing with multiplication problems. So if I gave you like 5 to the third times 5 squared, first thing you always want to check for is, do they have the same base? Well, they do. They both have 5s here. I'm just going to highlight those. Okay, if that is the case, remember, you can write it out the long way. You can do this for all of them. 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 times 5. And that is the same as 5 to the 5th. Remember, a shortcut way, if you want to add this to your notes, is you can add the exponents for this law. Okay, the second rule that we learned was the power to power rule. So that would be one that looks like this: 5 cubed to the second power. Okay, so remember, power to power basically means you're taking a power to a power right here. Now you could write it out the long way. So 5 cubed is 5 times 5 times 5. And then you could do that twice. 5 times 5 times 5. That's the same as writing 5 to the 6th. Okay, so the shortcut that we learned is when you have a power to power, you can multiply the exponents. Okay, again, you might want to have that in your notes. All right, our next rule is the quotient of powers. So remember, with the quotient of powers, remember, same thing. You still have to have the same base. Okay, I have 9. Okay, you can write it out the long way. You guys can see I did that. And then remember, we can cancel common factors. So 9 divided by 9, that's a 1. 9 divided by 9, 9 divided by 9. So I'm left with, on the top, 1 over 9 squared. Now remember, the shortcut way that you learned is you can actually subtract the exponents, and you can take the top minus the bottom. So I can really write that as 9 to the 3 minus 5 power, which is the same as 9 to the negative second. And then you guys should know another way to write a negative exponent is 1 over 9 squared. Okay, so these are both technically correct, just 2 different ways to write it. All right, your next law that you learned was 0 exponents. So remember, anything to the 0 power, does not matter what it is 1. Okay, if I have x to the 0 power, that is 1. Now, sometimes you're going to get a little bit trickier ones that might say like this: 6x to the 0 power. Now, if you have one like this, you have to follow the order of operations. You have to do this first, exponents first. X to the 0, that's 1. And then it says times 6. 1 times 6 is 6. Okay, so you do have to be careful and see what the 0 is actually with. All right, the last law that you learned about was with negative exponents. So again, if you have a negative exponent, we learned that's the same as rewriting it as 1 over the positive exponent, so x squared. Same thing if I gave you like 3 to the negative 4th. That's the same as saying 1 over 3 to the positive 4th. All right, so here are a couple quick mixed review problems. So I want you to pause the video and I want you to try these 3 on your own, see what you get. All right, so hopefully you tried them. So let's look at the first one. I noticed that I am multiplying, so I'm going to use my product of powers rule. So when I do that, remember, a shortcut is you can add the exponents. So if my final answer is really going to be 12 to the 6th plus negative 2 power. Now if I add 6 plus negative 2, I end up with 4, so my final answer is 12 to the 4th. Okay, this one, it's my quotient of powers rule. So I'm dividing. So remember, you can take, it's going to be 2 to you can take the top exponent minus, now here's where you have to be careful, the bottom exponent. I'm going to rewrite that in a different color quick. So 14 minus negative 3. Now you guys have to be very careful there. There's 2 subtraction signs in a row, so I'm going to add the opposite, and I end up with 2. 14 plus 3 is to the 17th power. So this one actually equals 2 to the 17th. Okay, my next one. I have 4 to the negative 2 to the 3rd power. So when I have a power to a power, remember, you can multiply. So I end up with 4 to the negative 6. And then remember, another way to write a negative exponent is 1 over 4 to the 6th. All right, so these are a couple tricky problems that you guys are going to see that I want to point out. So first thing that you might notice, this problem has an addition and a multiplication sign. Now you have to follow the order of operations. So remember, multiplying comes first. You may remember in the past we've like boxed these terms, but you need to do your multiplying first. So I see I'm multiplying, so I remember my shortcut is I can add those. So it's going to be 5 to the 7th. Okay, plus, now I know 5 to the 0 power. Well, anything to the 0 power is 1. Now to simplify this anymore, I can't really put those together, but I can figure out what 5 to the 7th is. If I type that in on my calculator, I get 78,125 plus 1 would be 78,126 if I wanted to simplify that all the way. Okay, let's take a look at this bottom one. Now, if you guys notice this one, it is all multiplying, right? Multiplying. So I can use my product of powers rules, and I can add my exponents. So if I add 2 plus 0 plus 4, I end up with 3 to the 6th. Now, some of you might have said, okay, well, I know that's a 1. Okay, so think about that if this still works. I could have done 3 to the 4th times 3 squared. Add those. I get 3 to the 6th times 1. That is still 3 to the 6th. All right, let's try this one then. So again, you have to be careful if they throw in some plus symbols. So here's a plus symbol, here's a times symbol. I need to do my multiplying first. So I'm going to do this part first. Okay, it's a product of power rules. So I can use my shortcut, I can add these. I end up with 8 squared plus, well, 8 to the 0 is 1. Okay, so now I can't really combine those unless I changed 8 squared. So 8 times 8 is 64. Plus 1 would give me 65. All right, this shows up a lot too, so I want to show you guys this real quick. So do you notice the difference between these two problems? This one's adding, this one is multiplying. Okay, laws of exponents, we don't know any tricks when it's adding. So if I'm looking at this top problem, I just need to solve this like a normal problem. If I said you had 7 x's plus 7 more x plus 7 more x, you actually just add those. I've got 7, 14, 21 total x's. So those you just combine like terms. There's no law of exponents for that. It's just adding. Just like if I said, what's x plus x? Well, that's 2x. Or if I said, what's 5 plus 5? You just add it. Okay, so you just kind of combine them. Down here, now when it's multiplying, you use the law of exponents. So I see, I could even split this up a little more. 7 times x times 7 times x times 7 times x. I see 7 times 7 times 7, which is the same as 7 to the 3rd power. And then I see x times x times x, which is the same as x to the 3rd power. So my final answer would be 7 to the 3rd, x to the 3rd. And you could always multiply that out. Okay, let's try another quick one that puts some of the laws together. So on the top, really nothing to do yet. So I'm just going to rewrite 2 to the 5th. On the bottom, I see a power to a power. I hopefully know the law. It's multiply, 2 to the 10th. Okay, next thing that I might notice, and again, there's a couple ways to do this, is I see dividing. So I know I can take my top exponent minus my bottom one. So 5 minus 10, that leaves me with 2 to the negative 5th. And then finally, if it's a negative exponent, I'm going to rewrite it as 1 over 2 to the 5th power would be my final answer. All right, let's try this one. If I look at the top, I notice that it is a product of powers rule. So I can add my 2 exponents. So if I take negative 7 plus 2, I end up with 9 to the negative 5th. On the bottom, I have 9 to the negative 3rd. Okay, now I notice it's a division problem, so I can use my quotient rule, which is I can write my 9, and I can take my top power, negative 5, minus, now be careful, the bottom power is negative 3. So you should have kind of a double negative there. Okay, now I can add the opposite. Add the opposite, and I'm left with 9. Well, negative 5 plus 3 is negative 2. And then finally, when I have a negative exponent, usually we try to rewrite it as a positive one. I'm going to rewrite it as 1 over 9 squared. And then finally, if I wanted to even simplify it more, you don't have to, but it would be 1 over 9 times 9 is 81. All right, last one I just want to point out, because a lot of students are making mistakes on this, is if you have this squared, you have to square everything inside here. So it would become 5 squared, and then 3 times 2, which is x to the 6th. So be careful if you see ones like that. Same thing here. If I had like 5 times x cubed times x times 5 to the 4th, a lot of students are making mistakes where they're not thinking there's really a little 1 here. There's really a little 1 here. So now I could add my exponents here and get 5 to the 5th. And then here, x to the 3rd times x to the 1st, add those, I get x to the 4th. So just be careful. If there's not an exponent with it, remember you can always add a 1 right there. All right, so hopefully you guys are feeling pretty good about the laws of exponents. If you do have questions, please make sure you check in with your teacher.